Balance. Noun. Definition of balance according to the dictionary. Physical equilibrium. Trouble keeping your balance on a sailboat. Lost his balance and fell. Equilibrium's the metaphorical sense to me. It's not always literal. We all fall down sometimes. And with good friends, we can stand back up. They even hold us while we try to get our sea legs. The ability to retain one's balance. Right? Do you actually retain balance? Stability, produced by even distribution of weight on each side of the vertical axis. When the two sides of the scale are in balance, is there actual balance? Because I'm kind of thinking it's more like a juggling or a seesaw. Accounting, equality, balance between the totals of two sides on an account. Mental and emotional steadiness. My name's Chris Greer, and I'm here with my first podcast, so bear with us. I decided to start journeying into deeper conversations because I noticed that it felt like I never had those deep conversations. My sister lives on the other side of the country. My best friend moved 2 hours away a couple years ago. And everybody I know at this point is friends that I've made through my son's carpool when he was little, people I worked with. They just weren't the kind of people I could have the deeper conversations with. They didn't know me like I wanted to know them. So the point of this podcast is to be able to facilitate, participate, and enjoy those kind of deeper conversations. So today's conversation is all about balance. In 2017, it was my word of the year. I was at the point where I was finishing up working I'd been in school for 4 years. I was newlywed, I had a son in high school, and I was trying to start a business. So balance was big to me, and it was definitely a journey of a year. So I thought that was a great place to start today, because we all hear the word about balance, balancing your work, balancing your life, balancing this, balancing your health. And so it's definitely a topic of conversation. And I decided to invite Nicole. She's a mama, a yoga teacher, a full-time student, basically a woman extraordinaire. And I'm happy to call her my friend. So we're going to have just a fun little conversation today. It's totally unscripted. There's going to be mess ups. There's going to be giggles, but that's what deeper conversations are all about. So welcome, Nicole. I'm excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here, Chris. I'm really inspired by you, and I think what you're doing is great, and it's a needed community. So congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And so why I invited Nicole first is because Nicole, being this awesome yoga teacher, and if you I've been in lots of yoga classes, and I'm going to make her blush by saying it, but I really think that Nicole is the best yoga teacher I've had, and she's who brought me back to yoga. And that's kind of catapulted me a little bit more in the direction that I'm going. I was on a journey, and her inspiration gave me back. So I want to give you, Nicole, a moment to share a little bit about who's Nicole. Tell us about you.
Okay. Well, currently I am 39 years old. This podcast is being produced during quarantine here, so I'm a kind of stay-at-home mom, if you will. I'm helping my kindergarten daughter do distant learning, is what they're calling it. So, but yeah, and I'm coming out of this 10-year marketing career and jumped into going to school full time and teaching yoga. And, I'm pursuing this goal of being more involved in people's lives in, a more therapeutic and holistic way, kind of a combination of both. I teach yoga and meditation practices within a recovery-oriented field, so like drug and alcohol recovery facilities, and I also teach within the AIDS community through a local organization here in Greensboro. And, I just really value the idea of bringing these practices to people in a really practical way and keeping it very subtle. That's been a big part of my journey. So I love that your topic is balance. And I know we've had conversations about just, that's a tricky word, you know. But I really, you know, my desire, my passion is to help people understand that the word yoga and the word meditation, it's so wide, you know, and it's so big. And it's possible for anyone, any place, at any time. It took me a while to figure that out. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, where I am. And I got to tell you, this pandemic quarantine situation has, it's been humbling, you know. It's been like, wow, now it's time to like really question, am I practicing what I'm preaching? And there's been times where I've had to take a step back and say, wow, you know, I don't know if balance is so much the word as it is just like really shifting priorities, you know. So I've had to really take a look at, you know, what's ego and what's, you know, really like spiritual conditioning, because I can get caught in the middle of those two things a lot. But, you know, maybe we'll talk more about that, you know, later. But yeah, and then I guess the final thing I'll say is, you know, one thing that I really don't shy away from is, you know, I come from this, you know, jaded past of having a, you know, a drug and alcohol addiction myself. For 10 years. And, you know, I've been in abstinence-based lifestyle for over 13 years now. And, you know, the past 6.5 years, yoga and meditation practices, I believe, have really, you know, helped sustain that lifestyle for me. So, but yeah, so I'm just real glad to be here and interested in us just having this conversation and seeing where it goes.
Absolutely. We've got our water bottles, our tea, and we're just rolling with it.
Yeah.
So I thought we would start by talking a little bit about the definitions of balance. You know, it's a noun and a verb, and
yeah.
It's definitely one that is an active verb, because are you ever actually balanced? I think it's more like balancing. So were any of them that I mentioned already ones you want to dig deeper into?
The steadiness, maybe the steadiness. Yeah, I could kind of pick up on that. I think that I remember one time being in a therapy session, you know, this idea being presented to me that multitasking, it doesn't actually exist. Mm-hmm. And I thought, because I always sort of prided myself on the ability to multitask, but really, I don't know that I was accomplishing as much, you know. So when I was presented with that idea, I started, you know, getting some, you know, therapeutic homework assignments to take home with me, and I did. I kind of noticed, like, wow, I'm really not completing a lot of tasks. I'm kind of starting, stopping. And I was using a lot of energy to get multiple things started. And while they may have given this illusion of being completed, I wasn't necessarily given 100%, you know? And so when I think about like this word balance, I don't know, you know, like, does that really exist? You know, I mean, do you have to give up one thing in order to do another thing? I think like outwardly, balance takes on a whole different meaning than inwardly, you know. And it took me, I mean, I'm almost 40, and I think I'm just now starting to focus more on that balance, like that's inside versus what's going on outside, you know.
Well, and I love that you brought up multitasking. You know, one of the things I didn't say in the intro is I have recently started my own teacher training, not with the intention of teaching, but really not sure where it's going. And Nicole is kind of why
I'm so excited.
And it'll be interesting to see over the next 10 months to 10 years what develops. It's already changing. But in one of the texts that I was reading recently, it talked about, you know, I'm reading the Indian text or basis theory, And it says that Westerners think that if you're successful, if you can multitask, but in fact, you're not here, you're not now, you're not present.
That's
And
right.
that's where we lose our balance. So when you talk about having, you were so focused at work and then you get home and bringing it home emotionally, that's where we lose that living now and living present. Because
Mhm.
that's where I feel my balance, where I feel like I'm getting it at the moment, is when
Yeah.
Kevin is sitting on the floor and I just take that minute to think, my 19-year-old sitting on the floor in my living room talking to me, and I'm grateful for this moment. Like, that's my balance.
Yeah.
Because for so long, we do think as women, we're like, oh, we have to multitask, we have to do everything, we have to work hard. And that's when we get to this point in life where we're midlife and we're like, I want more, I want deeper, because we
Yeah.
spent so much time on the surface. At least for me, I spent so much time on the surface priding myself. Well, I'm setting an example. I'm leading by example. I want him to be strong. I want Kevin to learn from me. And really,
Yeah.
I didn't teach him how to always be present.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's kind of taken that thought, that train of thought you just had maybe a step further. Is I've noticed that I place a lot of conditions on things like, well, I can't do this until I do this. You know, it's almost like sort of a ritual, so to speak. It's like I can't sit down and relax and have a cup of coffee and watch a cartoon with my daughter until I clean the dishes from breakfast, make the bed, you know, start the load of laundry, whatever those things are. And, you know, maybe to some people that comes easy, you know, but for someone like me, it's difficult to learn how to relax in the moment, to understand that while I'm running around saying, well, I can't relax until I get these things done, I'm missing what's happening. You know, I'm kind of missing out on that. And so that's been a really big part of, you know, my experience and kind of what I said earlier, being here at home all day, it's really brought a lot of focus on myself in ways that have been uncomfortable, you know, and I think the beauty of evolving into like a practice and I mean, I finished yoga teacher training several years ago, and over the course of that time, and then you know, becoming someone who holds space for others now, I've noticed that I have a deeper awareness, and I used to think that there was going to be this day where it was just going to be full awareness all the time, and I was just going to like that it would like kind of prevent me from having certain behaviors. But really what I found out that it does is, you know, this morning I woke up and I had that like ritual tendency, like I'm making the bed and I'm doing this and I'm, you know, and I stopped myself with pillows on the floor and I thought, okay, what's really going on? Why am I, you know, being so crazy about the bed being made right now, you know? And it was really, you know, something else there. And so I think learning to, you know, meet myself with just sort of a, oh, okay, that's what's going on. We can work with that. You know, we can recognize that. You know, learning how to kind of shed some of the shame of that. And to be honest with you, you know, not to be a Debbie Downer here on the word balance, but you know, it can be kind of intimidating, you know, to hear that word. And then it's like when I find myself, you know, I'm not being balanced, you know, then I'm judging myself. And the worst thing for me is comparing myself, you know, to other people. Like, you know, that's just a dangerous place for, you know, we all kind of have our ways of adjusting and balancing, if you will.
Well, and I love that you say that, because that's one of the things about having these real kind of conversations is really, it is an intimidating word. A lot of the words that we strive for are intimidating, and that's why we strive for them. You know, when I was in my first marriage, Kevin was in elementary school. I was room mom by de facto. I had like teachers would tell me I was room mom. Like I didn't get to sign up. I got told I was because the year before the teachers were like, no, you need to do it. And I remember the day that my ex and I split up. He left and I had a conference with Kevin's teacher at school. So I knew that, it was all about to hit the fan. And so I went to school and I said to her, I'm like, before we even start, I just need to tell you what's going on. And I told her that my husband and I had split up and that, Kevin was in for a rocky road because he didn't know it was coming. And I remember her saying, you're kidding. Like, you guys are like the perfect family. Like, we all watch you walk around the school and we think everything's great. And so that's when you say, like, judging other people, it's so often that you think somebody's balanced, but you don't know what's happening at home. You don't know how they're holding it together, because we've all been at that spot where we're just holding it together and it's a facade. And if you say that you haven't, you're not being honest with yourself.
Well, that and that word, the word home, I think of that like internal balance, like what you're talking about, like I don't know what's going on inside of another person. And so, learning certain practices, it sort of helps evolve my compassion to the people around me and kind of pick up on these energies of like, wow, I'm really, comparing myself to that person, or, hey, I'm being really judgmental of this person. And I'm able to come back to a place of exactly what you just said. I don't know what's going on inside of that person. I don't know. And I know for me personally, some of the most depressing and difficult and emotional times of my life, to the outside world, it appeared that I, really had my shit together. And the truth is, on the outside, maybe it looked like that, but inside, I was a mess, just an absolute mess, so it's a tricky word. And I gotta tell you too, one thing that has just really, I don't, know if maybe we want to use this word, like empowered me, or just really helped me break away from, this sense of comparing myself to other people, is learning how to say no. Like,
oh goodness,
I did not have to sign up for every single parent volunteer activity. I don't have to attend every single event that I'm invited to. I don't have to, extend myself to the point that there is no time to really go inside and take a look, at what's really going on, and again, this is just my experience. I noticed that when I'm rushing around and I'm trying to meet every obligation that I think I'm expected to attend, and I'm trying to be there for every person who's asked me for a favor, or show up for, everything to be seen so everyone knows like I'm doing my part. It goes back to that. That's really like some, other form of like multitasking, or thinking that I'm balanced. What I've noticed is, and here's a perfect example. This is where it all started. My daughter has a lot of social anxiety. I know we've talked about this in private conversations. But there's this time of year, I don't know if you remember this, being like a mom, where it literally feels like you're invited to 2 birthday parties a weekend, and so when you have a young child who already has like extreme social anxiety, and, and I have a bit of like, social anxiety as well, and you're trying to go to all these birthday parties because I don't want to be the mom who's not taking my kid to the birthday party, there's no joy in that. Like I found myself almost forcing her to go to these parties that she didn't feel comfortable being at, because I didn't want her to be the unpopular kid in school, or I didn't want to be the parent who, didn't bring a gift, or, stopped getting the invite to the birthday party. I mean, it was this whole thing. And, and I also, didn't know if it was okay for me to talk to the other parents and say, hey, this is why we're not, attending the party. And, it was a lot. And I remember we went to this birthday party one day, and it was just a horrible experience. My daughter screaming and crying, and she's literally begging me to go. And I found myself saying things to her like, well, look at all the other children. They're playing, and I wasn't necessarily being mindful of what I was saying to her. And, and finally I just thought, okay, 20 minutes had gone by. We were trying to breathe, and I was trying to talk her into, playing. But, it just became obvious that it wasn't going to work. So I removed her from that situation, and we get out to the car and get ourselves together. And the first thing she asked me was, are you mad at me? And I thought, man, you know what? Never again. And in that moment, like, I made a commitment that, not just for her, but for me too. Like, it's really important to listen to that. Like, she knew what she needed. She knew that wasn't where she was spiritually and emotionally, and experiencing that with her, it affected me in a way that I thought, you know what? I feel like that sometimes. And it's like I push through so I can show up anyway. And really, it's okay to not force that on myself. It's okay to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm going to sit still, and I'm going to look at, what's going on, and really ask myself, what do I need in this moment? And learning how to do that has really been life-changing for me. But not only that, it's helped me learn how to be more compassionate with myself and with other people. It helps me be less judgmental, to other people. Like, if a mom calls me and says, hey, listen, we just had a really busy weekend, I don't think we're going to make, the birthday party after all. I understand that. I'm not threatened by that, and I don't take that personally. In fact, today I say, good for her. Like, how courageous that is for us to be able to do that. And once we open up to one another and have the kind of conversations that we're having right now, and that you and I have had, many times before, like, that's when I think that deeper connection starts happening. And that's when I think that we become more relatable to one another and less comparing of one another. And when that's going on, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Well, and I think one of the neat things, like, one of the ladies that I had done some work with before really taught the premise of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Now, this woman,
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever heard that, actually. That's
really, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I totally, so, I've got a home-based business. My husband quit his job, not the ex-husband, the good husband. He works with us now, and Kevin works with me now. And there was this point where I was still, because for a long time I was the one, I worked from home. So I wanted to have at least dinner in the crock pot when my husband got home, because he went to work way earlier than I did. And there was all these things that, like, as pressure, I said to myself, well, I'm supposed to do, because I've always, after having the time as a single mom, like, I had to prove something. Because being a single mom, I had to prove that I could do it, that I didn't need anybody else.
Yes, I have been there so many times.
Yeah, you totally get that. And so there was this point where, like, I had to do it all. I had to run my business. I had to make sure that Kevin was taken care of. I had to make sure that I had enough financially to take care of myself and Kevin if anything ever happened. And then I had to, do laundry and clean house. And there was a point that I just said to my husband, I'm like, you know what? Cooking dinner is on my hell no list. Like, I don't want to work all day and then have to cook dinner. So if it's not on his hell no list, I wanted him to take it. And I told him, the minute it becomes your hell no, then we'll start splitting it. But right now it's on my how no list. And so I am very blessed.
I need to make one of those lists. Well,
Oh my gosh, I actually have a handout that I use. I'll send it to you.
That's awesome. No, that's really great. I want to give that to everyone. Well, I get caught up in this when you're talking about the single mom thing. I got really fixated for a while, and I can catch myself doing it sometimes now, definitely not as much. But when I was growing up, we didn't like sit down at the dinner table at night and talk about our day and what we're grateful for. And for some reason, I've convinced myself that in order for my daughter to have a healthy childhood, we have to do those things, and we have to do it every single night, and it has to be perfect. And with like certain holidays, I mean, we're Jewish, so there's like so many holidays all year, that we're like preparing for, and they last like a whole week, and then every Friday night is Shabbat. And so, I notice like sometimes I can spend so much time trying to make it so special and so meaningful that by the time it gets here, it's like lost it, and it's just, the expectation was so high that, once again, like I miss the spark.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm trying so hard to make it perfect, but sometimes I don't really have to make it perfect. I just kind of have to show up for it. And, sometimes Shabbat dinner it gets to be, this beautiful baked challah that we make together, and this home cooked meal. And, when we say the blessings and there's the music and, we're just having this really peaceful time. But other times, this to me is a perfect example of what balance is, if we even want to go there with that word. But it's knowing when to like make it different, like sometimes Shabbat is just 2 tea light candles and a frozen pizza. You know what I mean? But it doesn't make it any less special, and it doesn't make it any, less meaningful, or, what it does sometimes is sometimes I can't be fully present. Sometimes I can be fully present after I've cooked a whole meal and baked bread and we're sitting at the table. Like sometimes that happens. But sometimes at 2:00 on a Friday, when maybe that's what I had planned to do, but a lot of things came up that I wasn't expecting that needed my energy. Sometimes it's more about, instead of balance, it's about like taking a step back, shifting priorities, and saying, hey, what's going to create a better version of me tonight? How can I be more present in the situation? And sometimes that's a frozen pizza, So like a home cooked meal and a frozen pizza can be the difference of, a spiritually adjusted mom versus, a raging lunatic, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing, but I had noticed that with everything, like yoga, meditation, like for so long, I kind of didn't want to acquire those practices, or I sort of was hesitant about really diving in, because somewhere in my mind I had created that, like, if you can't practice for 2 hours a day, every single day for the rest of your life, then you're never going to be able to do it, But you know what? That's the same thing. Sometimes it's, a 5-minute meditation while I'm drinking a cup of coffee in the morning and there's cartoons playing in the background.
Absolutely.
But then sometimes, there's, the sound of the rain, and I'm sitting, still and listening, and, I'm there. And so, yeah, I don't know that that's balance. I think it's more, for me, it's awareness and pausing and learning how to ask myself what's most important to me.
Well, and that's awesome, because like one of the verb definitions of balance is to bring into harmony or proportion. So the example they say is, I struggled to balance my career and family life, a balanced diet. So when that's in the dictionary, you know that's something we're all working on. And it is like, I love the word in that is harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
it's,
love that too.
balance is more about harmony because sometimes we need to be a little more work and sometimes we need to be a little more home, and just making sure at the end that, end of day, end of week, end of month, whatever, that those two balance themselves. If you think of like the legal justice scale thing that they do, the image, like that, those balance each other out
Mm-hmm.
because it's bringing that into harmony. And when we find that harmony, then that's where we find that inner balance that you were talking about earlier, is that,
Mm-hmm.
because I know there are definitely days, and it's a little different for me now that Kevin's 19 and he doesn't need me as involved in his life as Rachel's 5. She needs you really involved. Um, but there's definitely that, like, some weeks I just need to be really, really focused on work. And then other weeks I'm like, cool, I'm taking like 2 days off this week. And, my chair right there is
Yeah.
the boys come in and sit on, and you can't see, but I have a brown towel there because they come in in the shop. And Kevin loves to work on cars. So I'm like, I know they're brown chairs, but I want a towel in it so that when I sit in it later, I don't have to sit on the towel with dirt.
Mm-hmm.
But he comes in and he sits in the chair, and as soon as I know he's there, it's like, okay, let me finish this sentence, let me finish what I'm writing, and then I give him my attention. So
Mm-hmm.
and he just sits. And I mean, he doesn't sit long, but he knows that, like, I don't get to finish, and then she'll give me full focus, because that's where I find my harmony, is being able to be present at that moment.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew that stuff when he was younger, because I'm way better at being more present for him now. Like, I was at every sporting event, at every this, at every that. I worked 3 jobs at one point, and I was doing it because it was important. But man, I didn't enjoy it. Like, I'm just like, oh, cool, I get the single mom trophy because I did all the stuff I was supposed to.
Yeah.
And I survived.
That's the thing too. It's, I think we can, like, doing all of that, like what you're describing, it's multitasking. Like, just because you are physically present does not mean that you are spiritually and mentally present. And one of the first things that I teach, because I primarily, focus on beginner, classes, what, I love the atmosphere of introducing these practices to people early in their journey. But that's one of the first things that, I ask students to be mindful of, that our physical body is always in the present moment, but our mind is what time travels, So I'm like, I might be at the, basketball game or at the school function, but if my brain is thinking about the 100 other things that I, need to do or have to do, or things that I wish I would have done that I hadn't done, if I'm, in the past or future, I'm not really there. I'm not really experiencing what's happening, and learning how to tap into that, and pull back from commitments, because I've learned that too. It's okay. Like, if I RSVP for this fundraiser, it is okay for me to not go to that fundraiser, and not even really having to explain that to anyone. I love that, Rumi Poet's my favorite, and how he has that life is, an act of holding on and letting go. That's what I think of. I think I'm trying to hold on to this, but I really need to let it go.
And that's a whole other conversation. That's control.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But but that's really what we're doing though when we're trying to multitask. We're trying to control but yeah, that is a whole other conversation. But,
yeah, because control is something else we all do that, once we let go of that, then there's a little bit more balance or harmony. But really the whole process, like, one of my favorite sayings is, I'm not a perfectionist, but my husband may say I am. I'm also not a control freak, but my husband may say I am.
Yeah, that's really, really funny.
Because if you say that you're a control freak or you're perfect, then that's admitting that you're not in control of who you are, that you're not perfect. So we can't actually admit that about ourselves. We definitely owe ourselves the honesty. And that's one of the yoga yamas is honesty and truth. And that one really got me, because I was like, wow, I'm such a, I think I'm a really good, honest person. And then I realized, so I wasn't truthful with myself. So exactly the things you say about, I just wasn't truthful with myself. In the conversations I was having with myself. And that's when we are truthful, then we are able to go deeper and have those deeper conversations and those deeper friendships that aren't just surface, where you can be real, because until you're real with yourself, you're not real with other people. Like, it's all fake. Yeah. Me as the mom, the room mom, it's me as the room mom, everybody thought I had it together and I was dying inside.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what happens is we all have a breaking point. We all have a threshold, and it's not always the same, like,
absolutely.
I mean, otherwise there wouldn't be all these movies out there. I mean, how many movies have you seen where, like, this woman just, like, loses it, it's like she has that final, thing and just blows up on everybody at the PTA,
Well, and some of our breaking points change from day to day. Like, where are you in your cycle that month? Where are you in deadlines that month? Where are you with your child that month? Like,
right.
I mean,
and that all comes back to that, like, learning to, or having these practices that bring about this awareness where we can pause in the middle of whatever is going on and really shift a spiritual priority. Maybe that's that. I don't know. Like, but to me, I definitely, the word harmony, like you said earlier, that resonates with me a lot, because there is going to be more harmony if I am able to stop, take a breath, and say, okay, what's most important to me right now? Is it showing up for this event, or is it going home, resting my body, resting my mind, finding a few minutes of peace and quiet, whatever that might be, And the more that we're able to practice, like you were talking about, practicing those yama and niyamas, like when I'm looking at myself and I'm doing my self-study and I'm being honest with myself, and I'm practicing, love and compassion to myself, then I'm able to respond to other people with more grace and dignity, and less shame. Like I said, but before really creating, like, experiencing, I should say, vulnerable conversations with some of the, other moms that I went on this trip with, had I not done that, I don't know what I would have done without them during, what we're all going through right now, So I think that's another thing, that could be a whole other conversation, is, I can't predict what is coming down the line, so every conversation I have with another person, or every time I, show up on my mat for practice, whether that's yoga or meditation or both, it's really what it is it's preparing me for something. I still don't always know what that's going to be, but when I take time to do self-study, like we talked about in the yamas, and I look back, I can see a clear, like, lineage of spiritual growth and how things are so connected and intertwined. So when I think of the word harmony, that's what I'm thinking about, is it's like this flow of energy from past, present, into future. I really like thinking about it like that.
Yeah. One of the other definitions for balance as a verb is counterbalance, offset. And so it uses the example of, he served black coffee to help balance out the sweetness of the dessert. Balance. He his speed will likely balance out his competitor's greater strength. And so while those are definitions of like A or B, like our lives are a bunch of counterbalance. And even our lives with our partners, with our children, with, you know, coworkers, whatever, because we all balance each other. We balance the different elements in our lives. So that kind of goes with what you're talking about, like building that community of women. You're able to balance, to offset each other, so that when somebody needs you, you're able to be there. So I really liked that definition too, that it brings it to the, so when you really look at these definitions, like when we look at the word balance, or we talk about somebody's balanced, or that's our word for the year, we don't break it down into all these things that it's a verb, it's happening, it's movement, it's not actually, you know, math says that it's to arrange so that one set of elements exactly equals another, a balanced mathematical equation. But we're not math, we're human. So it's definitely flow, it's to bring into harmony, it's to offset the other stuff. There's so much to the depth of it.
Yeah. And I think it even goes back to me to the simplest form. One of the first things that I remember becoming consciously aware of is, what if I had never experienced like heartbreak or sorrow or pain? Like, would I know what joy felt like?
Absolutely.
You know, it's like you kind of can't experience one without the other.
Right.
And just, I think for a long time in my life, I say this constantly, but I made a lot of decisions, a lot of permanent decisions on very temporary emotions.
Yes.
You know? And last night, on Wednesday night, I lead a meditation group, and the topic last night was, this too shall pass, but keeping in mind that goes for the good stuff too, So like you talking about Kev coming in and having this, sitting on the chair and talking and having this conversation, like, you hear it all the time. And people told me when my daughter was first born, they said the days are really long, but the years fly by, So I got chills. But it's that thing. It's like, this moment, this isn't going to last forever either, So it's so easy for us to use that "this too shall pass" mantra when we're in pain and suffering, like this too shall pass, it won't last forever. But there's another element of that too, when my daughter gets out of the bathtub and her hair is wet and she's wrapped up in the towel and I can smell her shampoo and she's just letting me hold her in her arms, like that moment's gonna pass. And I need to be there for that right there, because that's not gonna last forever either. I think so much of our lives, so much of my life has been spent. Oh, I'm gonna get emotional now. Like,
you already had me, because Kevin's 19 and I'm like, I missed the little bath. And
so it feels like so much of my life and so much of my early stages of like yoga and meditation practices, it was so formed around, overcoming suffering or some kind of pain that I had experienced, just being so focused on hardship. And where I am, like where I feel like my practice and what I hope, my offerings are, reflecting, is I really would like to channel in this idea of it's okay, to sit and simmer in the good too, and to focus on those moments that really do, pass by. And honestly, I think that, being stuck here all day has kind of helped me, realize like I can make this the best time of our life together, as like mother and daughter, or I can resist it. And, that's the root of all pain and suffering, is resisting. When I'm not accepting and I'm resisting and I want it to be different and I'm trying to, control it and make it different, that's where the pain comes from. And then what happens is my practice becomes more about the pain. And, so there's this whole other like conversation about like the neuroplasticity, in my brain. It's like literally, Velcro for pain and discomfort, but Teflon, for gratitude and joy, So really, I want to build up this idea of, these daily joyous occasions and learning how to sit with that, because I can't experience one without the other, I mean, I don't know, because I've never lived a life that, was pain free. I don't think as humans, I don't think that's possible.
Well, and I love that that's where you brought it, because the last definition that I had was to equal or equalize in weight, number, or portion. The good times balance the bad times. So you were totally like exactly where I wanted to go with that. Because I definitely, and you hear so much of that of, I'm working on the niyamas, and I'm not the best with the Sanskrit, but the second niyama is all about contentment.
Yes.
And being content when it's bad versus being content when it's good. Because it's super easy to be grateful and content when it's good, but when it's bad, can you be content that it's bad, that it will pass? And we actually, it is my belief that we have to have some of those uncomfortable moments, some of those moments that aren't warm and fuzzy and obvious gratitude, because then when we have those moments of harmony and joy and where it's really easy to be grateful, then we're able to, like Kev was having a teenage moment the other day, and it was really funny because we've been through some struggles with him. And I remember last year, my husband and I both being like, what we wouldn't do for him just to be a difficult teenager. Like, we just want him to be a moody 19-year-old.
Yeah.
And so after he kind of literally like stomped in the house, he wasn't mad at me, but I was who he was taking it out on. I looked at Matthew and said, we wanted a moody teenager. Like, we're grateful that he's just being a moody teenager right now. And so I like really, because I'm working on that contentment, it made me giggle that I was like, this is the moment that I want to throw him down the stairs and say, tell your mother you're sorry. But really, I'm just going to be content that he's being moody, and that it's okay, because there's going to be the other moment that he's sitting in my chair waiting to talk to me about something. And I have to be grateful for both of those, because if he was always sitting in my chair, I wouldn't know how to be grateful for that if he wasn't sometimes.
No, I completely get that. And I think that, we can miss out on a lot of that stuff because, I'm trying, somewhere in my brain, I've already decided what's going to make me happy and what I want and what I need. And when it's not that, then I'm just like, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I needed. And, what I've learned is most of the time I don't get to decide that, And on the subject of like mom type stuff, when we were going through some difficult times, a lot of different testings and certain things with our daughter, last year, and we're kind of, still in the process of that. But I remember, some of the diagnoses that were being thrown out, were really uncomfortable to hear. And I met with another mom, who had a child with similar diagnoses. And I'll never forget her telling me, when I said to her, I said, it just feels like I can't do this. Like I wasn't prepared to parent that type of child.
Right.
And then she looked at me and said, but maybe that's why she's your child, because no one can parent her the way that you do. It's like when I resist it, then I'm not able to see, like, there's a gift here that I'm going to be able to offer her that no one else in the whole world. It's like the things that Kev, that you guys have gone through with Kev, like no one could have parented him through that except for you. So when I stop and take a look back and kind of feel like, this is my role this is where I am, and this is what all the setting and all the practicing and all the conversations have brought me to. This is where those works come into place. I really, it's taken years to kind of come to that place, but I really feel, like you said, content. I feel content knowing that I really, we really can, face any situation. And maybe sometimes I'm a little more, graceful in the accepting process than others, but that's okay too. I'm not required to have this level of like spiritual perfectionism. And I don't want to forget to say this, and I'll hush after this, but in my work of like recovery, there's some literature that we read, and there's a sentence in there. Our friend Michelle used to point this out to me quite often, but there's a sentence in there that says, the most satisfactory years of your life lie ahead, which means some of the most amazing experiences of my life haven't even happened yet. And I don't want to miss them. I don't want to miss out on them when they happen. When I look back, over the years, I mean, I have countless experiences that tell me, as long as I'm alive and there's breath in my body, that literally anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Yes.
So, and in the moment, it's hard to pick up on that. That's why it really is important to sometimes say, you know what? No, I'm not going to go to this Tupperware party. I'm going to go home, and like, whatever, light a candle and sit still for 15 minutes, whatever that is, for us, maybe it's running or swimming or jogging or yoga or whatever, it looks different for all of us. I think we've kind of found our niche and what works for us, and there's enough room for other activities to work for other people, so
I mean, and I'll say, I love yoga, I love meditation, but I also love a day at the winery in the sunshine.
Yeah.
It varies on what.
Balance.
Yes. It's finding that moment for now of what works now, because as we said, finding that harmony is being present, being aware, being alert, being in the now and being present. So maybe that needs to be another conversation we have. It's all about present and now.
Yeah, I love it. It's so great.
Well, thank you so much for being here. You have been an awesome first guest. You are definitely the woman extraordinaire that I thought you are. I think you thought, I still do.
You're amazing.
But so, especially because right now with quarantine, I know that you're so active on Instagram and Facebook and with your yoga practices, and I love your meditation. So why don't you tell people how to find you? Because even though hopefully people here are this outside of Greensboro, if they want to find you online, where can they find you?
Yeah, no, okay, so currently we're at humbledwarriorsyoga.com. That's the website. You can also find, Facebook, Instagram, Humbled Warriors Yoga, and we host, starting this week, we're going to have our regular schedule. It'll all be Zoom classes. I lead a weekly meditation group. You can go, like I said, on the website. We also have a ton of free classes that are, posted on a YouTube channel. We have, some memberships, some online membership things going on right now. But yeah, we're just kind of brainstorming. I think we're gonna kind of like expand. Like I personally am wanting to kind of open up more areas of, group meditation and sharing, kind of creating a space for people to, ask questions and kind of have like a beginner's practice. I do beginner's yoga, and I'm, really wanting to start this beginner's kind of Q&A type meditation offering, so just kind of a donation base. But yeah, that's where you can find us, and we're in High Point, North Carolina.
Well, you are awesome. Thank you again so much. And
thank you so much. Send my love to the guys. They're super lucky to have you.
Thanks for listening today. If you're seeking deeper conversations, I invite you to visit my website at groundingjourney.com or subscribe to my podcast.